Welcome back to Literature Guide. Today's video is about one of the important movements in Russian poetry. I am talking about Acmeism in literature. Acmeism was a reaction of the Russian poets against a symbolic mode of writing and totalitarianism in Russia. The Acmeist movement had a mouthpiece in a magazine named Apollon. As a movement, Acmeism began in 1911 and it ended in 1921. The chief members of Acmeism were Nikolai Gumilev, his wife Anna Akhmatova, Osip Mandelshtam, and his wife Nadezhda Mandelshtam. The Acmeist writers put emphasis on the brevity and clarity in expression. The Acmeist writers considered the poet not as a seer, prophet, or a mystic, but a craftsman who uses a poetic image with care and precision. The Acmeist writers derived inspiration from William Shakespeare and Theophile Gautier, and they looked upon them as their forefathers. The Acmeist movement, though it could not survive for a long period of time, it left its imprints in Russian literature. I have already produced many videos on English poetry. For example, Beat Movement, Black Mountain Poets, Cubism and Futurism, Dadaism and Surrealism, the Decadent Movement, Georgian Poetry and Imagist Movement, Pylon Poets, Kailyard School, Anglo-Saxon Poetry, Anglo-Norman Poetry, Medieval Romances, and the other videos on English poetry. You can watch all these videos on this channel. If you really like the videos produced by this channel, do like and subscribe Literature Guide so that this channel can continue producing useful content for you in future also. I would like to thank all my subscribers and non-subscribers who have given great support to this channel. I wish you all a very happy new year 2022. I don't want to waste your time. Let's dive into a video and enjoy the video.
Acmeism. The emergence of Acmeism, or the Acmeist movement of the Russian poets, can be traced in 1911 in Russia. The Acmeist movement began in 1911 with the formation of an Acmeist guild of poets in Russia, which heralded the birth of Acmeism in Russia. The movement was led by the two famous Russian poets, Nikolai Gumilev and Sergei Gorodetsky. The Acmeist writers had a mouthpiece in the literary magazine named Apollon, which published a number of works and theories of the Acmeist school of poets. Some of the leading members of the group of Acmeist poets were Nikolai Gumilev, Sergei Gorodetsky, Anna Akhmatova, Osip Mandelshtam, and his wife, Nadezhda Mandelshtam. It should be noted that the Acmeists derived inspiration from the great writers such as William Shakespeare, François Villon, Théophile Gautier, and François Rabelais, and looked upon these great poets as their forefathers. Roughly speaking, Acmeism was a reaction of the Russian poets against tyranny, oppression and totalitarianism of the period. The Acmeist writers put stress on brevity of thought and clarity of sensory images and texture of poetry. They detested mysticism and vagueness of the symbolist mode of writing. The Acmeist writers deemed the poet as a craftsman rather than a seer or prophet. It clearly indicates their moving away from the conventional image of the poet. The Acmeist poets did not deem the poet as guardian of mystery. The Acmeists valued and emphasized precision and concreteness of the real world, and disliked vagueness and complexity of symbolism. They paid utmost attention to precision and logical use of poetic image in writing. Nikolai Gumilev, one of the founder members of Acmeism, Russian poet and critic, played vital role in the Acmeist school of poets. His famous collection of poetry, The Pillar of Fire, appeared in 1905. It was Nikolai Gumilev who formed the Guild of Poets in 1911, which was later known as School of Russian Acmeism. In his speech, Gumilev light-heartedly opined that the crown of England should be given to G.K. Chesterton. Anna Akhmatova, one of the pillars of Acmeist group of poets, occupies significant place in the arena of literature. She produced her first poem in 1907 and joined the Guild of Poets in 1911. Anna Akhmatova's famous collections of poetry are Evening, published in 1912, Rosary in 1914, White Flock in 1917, Plantain in 1921, and Anna Domini Macmxi in 1922. All these volumes of verse established her as a leading figure in Russian poetry and made her famous. Another famous volume of poetry from 6 books by Anna Akhmatova appeared much later in 1940. Anna Akhmatova has recorded her bitter experiences of Stalinist era in her famous work, Requiem, which appeared in Munich in 1963. Her work, Poems Without a Hero, presents her bitter memories of the Second World War, the Stalinist terror of the period, and an account of her life. Sergei Gorodetsky began his literary career as a symbolist writer, but he later on joined the Acmeist group of writers. He was one of the founder members of the Guild of Poets in 1911. Another famous literary figure of Acmeism was Osip Mandelshtam, who played significant role in Acmeist movement. He was associated with the Guild of Acmeist Poets. He produced his first volume of poetry, Stone, in 1913. These poems are tinged with clarity and brevity of expression. It was followed by another volume of poetry named Tristo in 1922, which earned name and fame for the poet. His most famous poems are The Age and the Slate Ode. Osip Mandelshtam's third collection of poetry, called as Poems, was published in 1928. His famous prose narrative, The Journey to Armenia, appeared on the literary scene in 1930. It is written in subjective vein. Like Anna Akhmatova, Osip Mandelshtam had to face hostility of the Stalinist terror, and he was imprisoned for recitation of a poem accusing Joseph Stalin. During his imprisonment, Osip Mandelshtam composed a poetry book named Voronezh Notebooks. It is important to note that Osip Mandelshtam's wife, Nadezhda Mandelshtam, played vital role in the publication of his works after the poet's death. She composed her most famous memoirs, Hope Against Hope, published in 1970, and Hope Abandoned appeared in 1974. The two memoirs present the account of the poet's life in detail. The memoirs also describe her bitter experience of the 20th century totalitarianism. It is interesting to note that her memoirs were published in Russia much later in 1990s. Thus, it is only due to Nadezhda Mandelshtam's strong will and determination, the works of Osip Mandelshtam could be published. It should be noted that the Acmeist movement came to an end in 1921. Though it was a short-lived movement in literature, it left its imprints on the history of literature.
This is a very short video on Acmeism or Acmeist movement in literature. I hope you liked this video. I have produced many videos on English poetry, drama and criticism. You can also visit my website. The link of the website is there on the screen. You can visit this website and get useful content there on this website.
Please subscribe Literature Guide.